welcome to Brewing Today, sponsored by the Beer Loons. Check out beerloons.com today for beer reviews, brewing tips, and beer products. And now here's your host, Mike Campbell. Hi everyone, I am your host, Mike Campbell, and welcome to episode number 2 of Brewing Today. Sit back, crack open a beer, and let's chat a bit about homebrewing. On today's show, we're going to talk about wort aeration, and let's talk a bit about different ways to aerate our wort, how important it is, and is it worth it? Before we start our show, let us know what you think. Please get in touch with us by emailing us at brewforyou@beerloons.com. or call our beer line at 512-827-0505, extension 4901. Or check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Just look us up by Beer Loons. Because we do need to hear from you. We want to know what you think of the new format, what types of topics you might like us to discuss, or any questions you might have that might make for a great episode, and what you think of the changes. If you're not familiar, we have the Brew For You show, which is really just beer reviews now, and the occasional interview with commercial brewers. We're hoping to work that out fairly soon here. And then we have Brewing Today, which is the show that I'm thanking that you are listening to at this point, which is about a homebrew topic that we get very specific on each week, but keep it to a timely fashion of roughly 10 minutes or less. That is always our goal. So, like I said, the first part of our show is going to be on different ways to aerate your wort. And keep in mind with a lot of these episodes, I'm trying to focus on a specific topic, and I don't want 45-minute shows and things like that. We're trying to keep it shorter, just so you pick up a little something maybe each time you listen to the show. So I may not hit everything, or there might be a few things that get missed. I don't think so. I think we have enough time to get in depth enough, but just in case, don't jump all over, well, there could be this, there could be that. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Right now we're talking about aeration. So some of the most common ways to do that is by stirring the wort rapidly, using something like a slotted spoon, that type of deal, using a mixer rod attached to a drill, using oxygen and an air stone, using an aquarium pump attached to an air stone, pouring the wort from one container to another, pouring the wort through a funnel or strainer. And, like I say, I'm sure there's others. These are the most common that I ever hear people using, so we're going to kind of go with that. I'm not trying to cover every way to aerate wort. So, the only time we want to introduce oxygen into our beer is just prior to adding our yeast, because yeast is a living organism and needs oxygen to survive. As far as it goes, all of the ways to aerate the wort that I mentioned are valid ways to get oxygen into your wort, but I want to put a little caution on things here, okay? Do not go crazy when using regular old air, the stuff we breathe, to aerate your wort. And what I mean by this, because some of you are right now going, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. What I mean is things like the mixer rod, the aquarium pumps, or strainer can introduce a lot of air, or too much air, which can oxidize the beer or introduce a bacteria to the beer. We'll talk more about how long, stuff like that in a sec, but the more surface area of the wort to come in contact with air, the more likely problems can arise. Be careful to not allow the wort to rain down in your fermenter. So we don't want little droplets. Try to keep it as whole as possible, like a constant pour type of deal. Little droplets are what causes a problem, usually oxidation more than anything, but the more surface area that comes in contact with the wort, the more opportunity there is for things to go bad. So, like I say, the little drops cause a lot of issues with the flavor of the beer. So, what should you look for? Unless you're using pure oxygen from a tank, we're only looking to create a little foam on top of the wort. That's usually kind of the best way to go. We don't want to stir for so long that we have several inches of foam, meaning 3, 4, 5 plus inches of foam. An inch or two is fine. Anything more than that can be a little bit overzealous. Don't panic here, but at the same time, don't go super crazy. You can run the drill and it creates a vortex which sucks a lot of air down in there. If we do that for 5 or 10 minutes, that can really cause some too much oxygen to come down into the wort. I know it sounds strange to caution this way because most people would say, "Oh no, aerate away, go crazy." But we do have to be aware there is too much of a good thing. When using pure oxygen, then several inches of foam is fine because oxygen shouldn't lead to oxidation or bacteria issues, which sounds kind of funny, but pure oxygen really doesn't cause us a whole lot of overall issues in the beer. Plus, you don't have to run it that long anyway, and at least we're not usually having to worry about bacteria when we use the little cans or tanks of oxygen. To give you an idea of some time frames, how long am I really talking about? I normally do the stirring rapidly, and this doesn't even have to be rapidly, but if you have a slotted spoon, or I do have to push this a little bit, the maple mash paddle that we sell at beerloons.com works fantastic for aeration. I get the best fermentations because of it. It's got the little holes in it, and when you swish it back and forth, it creates a fair amount of turbulence, but keep in mind we're only looking for a little bit of foam to form on top. And like I say, it's about 5 to 10 minutes or something. I do it while we're cooling the wort. Mix stir rod attachment to the drill, about 2 to 3 minutes at the most. Don't let it form the little tornado or vortex type of thing if you can help it. Just let it kind of splash around. I've used all these methods over the years. Just be aware that you don't want to go super long periods of time or too crazy. Using oxygen and air stone, roughly 30 to 60 seconds. I think most common is about 60 seconds, unless the foam causes you too many problems. An aquarium pump attached to an air stone with an air filter. That's important because if you just get the aquarium pump with no air filter, you can pump a whole bunch of impurities into your beer, which can cause you problems. But when you normally do this, 10 to 20 minutes is normally fine. I've seen up to 60 minutes. I don't know why exactly you have to run it that long, but usually 10 to 20 minutes is just fine. Again, kind of foam on top. Don't go super crazy. And then pouring the wort from one container to another, like a couple buckets, things like that, about 3 to 5 times usually gets the job done. The second part of our show is about how good aeration is. About how good aeration is, a very important part of how the yeast will ferment and how well the beer will turn out. It's important for the yeast to multiply quickly, grow strong, and eat well. Good fermentation will leave less chance for off flavors, esters, diacetyl, or any other nasty taste in your beer. Good fermentation will also allow the yeast to fully ferment the beer. This can be helpful for extract brews because of the extra malt flavor caused by the concentrated malt. Hear that a lot from extract brewers. Oh, there's kind of a sweetness. Well, if you can get a better fermentation, that can help. It's not going to eliminate it, but it can help. This is also especially important when trying to maximize the full alcohol potential of the yeast. If you're trying to create a barley wine with most beer ale yeast, then you're going to want to help the yeast as much as possible. For a beer yeast to get to 10, 11, 12% or so alcohol without ideal conditions is next to impossible. The yeast will fall short, leaving you with either a very sweet beer or a beer that you have to add a more aggressive wine yeast strain to help dry it out, which can really mess with your flavors as well. Even if you create a yeast starter, it won't do much good if the wort you are pitching into has no oxygen for the yeast to survive. Just because the beer ferments when you just toss in the yeast, it doesn't mean you're making the best beer you can possibly make. And essentially, isn't that the goal? Otherwise, why not go back to drinking Bud, Miller, or Coors because you don't care about what you're drinking anyway? I mean, I don't mean to be mean, but that's kind of the truth when it comes to this. If you don't care, if you don't make the best beer that you can make, then really, why bother? That's really the goal of homebrewing, I think, for most people. Make the best product and best beer you can make. Finally, is aeration worth it? I think you already know my answer to this one, but in case you fell asleep during the last segment, yes, good aeration is worth it. I don't care if you're making a 3% beer or a 12% beer because your beer will taste better with a good fermentation. The sugars will be eaten properly, the beer will clear better, the hops will come through as they should, the malt will be correct, and there should be no off flavors or aromas. Of course, this assumes you have an idea on how to brew. Sorry, but true. And that your recipe was good. Look, we really do all want to make great beer, and good aeration is just one of the things to make your beer better. I love yeast because it's one wild card in the brewing process that brings every brewer to his or her knees. Because yeast is a living thing, it simply will do what it wants. but we can help it do what we want by treating it right. Give it oxygen, and the yeast will respond positively. Yes, there are other things to help as well, but those are subjects for other shows, like I said at the beginning. If you take one thing at a time when you brew, you'll notice how much better your beers are. I really do hate it when a person changes 6 things and expects to be able to tell if the beer is better or not. Take 1 or 2 things tops and see what you think. Spend the little extra time to make sure you have enough oxygen in your beer and see how it turns out. I'm willing to bet you'll like the results. Well, that's going to do it for our show today. Thank you so much for spending time with us this week, and until next time, cheers.